Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Connecting People, Changing Lives. My name is Karen Glasser, and I'm here with my amazing cohort and co-host, Nancy Ferrari. Good morning, Nancy. How are you today?
Good morning, Karen. I'm doing very, very well, and I'm just so excited as we're shifting. Well, here in Southern California, we're shifting into fall because it's finally, I think summer might be behind us, but looking forward to these next couple months of the holidays, and of course we're still going to be doing some upcoming shows, but today is a really important day, and our guest is someone who we have been wanting to have on our show for a while, and I told her, I said, everything's in divine order based on the topics that we're going to be talking about. So without further ado, with us today is Jean Day, and I'm going to look at my notes real quick here. She is a college instructor at Georgia Highlands College. Obviously, she's with us from Georgia, and she's a former mental health therapist with 17 years of experience in the field of psychology. She has been, you may have seen her as a guest expert on other shows, and we're very delighted that she's here with us today because we have so many different topics ranging from preventing depression, which is a common occurrence that can happen during the holiday season, and we want to, have Jean share her expertise on that. We're going to talk about something called life condition, and when I talked with her a couple months ago on that, I said, yeah, we want to talk about that, and psychological wellness. I think those are two words that are really good together, and we're going to have her expand on that. So with that said, Jean, welcome to Connecting People, Changing Lives, and I'm just so happy that you're here with us this morning. It's morning here in California.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nancy. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, good.
We're excited too, and we're just going to jump right in. We're going to talk about depression. What is depression? Is there like a definition? If somebody says, I'm depressed, what does that really mean? What is depression?
Well, oftentimes people assume that it means just being sad, but actually depression can manifest in a lot of different ways. It can be you can feel angry, you feel hopeless, you lose pleasure in activities that normally would give you pleasure. You might start abusing substances, but it's generally having a very low mood. To be clinically diagnosed with depression, it has to be for at least 2 weeks.
And is depression something that is genetic, or can you just, this is probably not the right word, acquired depression? Can you become depressed and then not be depressed, or is this something that a lot of people have it in their family genes?
Yes, actually, depression is genetic. It can be passed down from generation to generation. And if you have a parent or a grandparent that has suffered with depression, you can definitely have a predisposition towards depression. But you can also, I believe in the philosophy of nature and nurture. And through that, I mean, it can be a combination of your genetics and your environmental circumstances that trigger the depression.
Very, very well said. I'm sitting here thinking about my family history. The lineage of all my family lived in Finland. That's where they were born. And as you probably know, people who live near the Arctic Circle, they don't have much sunlight. So it leads to depression. I mean, being void of sunlight for months and months and months, that leads to alcoholism, and so those are issues that I early on in my childhood I would hear about, and the older I've gotten, other countries as well. So then when you immigrate from those places, there's that. I'm trying to find the words. I think you probably know what I'm thinking here, is that you carry that with you, even though you're here in sunny California, but your life has been in that environment.
Right.
and how to shift out of that. And I'm not going to say this with anything other than factual. My mom self says every fall she starts to feel depressed.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to believe it's because of knowing they call it seasonal depression. I'm starting to learn that.
Yes.
So what can people do when it's based on a circumstance from another period, a chapter in their life or a time where they lived somewhere else and now they're not?
Right. Well, a lot of times people, part of what is a struggle, Nancy, is that people, are afraid of the stigma that's attached. And so often they don't reach out for help. But if you start to identify that you're isolating yourself, maybe sleeping too much or too little, you've lost pleasure in your daily activities, you're irritable, your mood is generally sad, I recommend, if it lasts more than 2 weeks, to seek help, therapeutic help. That can be through a community mental health center. It can be through a psychiatrist or a psychologist. But I recommend, if it's if it seems to persist for at least 2 weeks, I recommend that you get some type of help.
So you mentioned psychiatrist and you mentioned psychologist and then also mental health therapist. What's the difference between those three fields, and how does one make the distinction or the decision as to who they're going to see?
Okay, well, a psychiatrist has a medical degree and they can prescribe medications. And a psychologist has a doctorate in psychology but no medical degree, so they can't prescribe medication. And then a therapist basically does talk therapy. And what I recommend, usually if you go to a talk therapist or mental health therapist, they usually have a connection with a psychologist and a psychiatrist. So I always recommend going to a mental health counselor or licensed therapist, and then they will do their own assessment and determine should they refer you on to seek medication or to have further testing done to determine if you have any other emotional disorders going on that might be more severe.
That makes sense. Now, what is the connection, or can you talk a little bit about the connection between depression and addiction?
Yes. Well, one of the things that I often say is that along with depression, a lot of people begin to self-medicate, and by having more glasses of wine in the evening or the daytime, they may overtake prescribed medications. But there is definitely a connection between substance abuse and being depressed, and it's one of a clear identifier. If you find yourself drinking more, and being more involved in taking more medication, then you definitely need to seek help.
It seems to be quite a common problem, and with media as it is, everyone from top celebrities. I just remember seeing an interview with I think it's Patrick Kennedy, sharing his issues, and that he had a good story because there was hope. He sought out the help. When you see, and then the frustrating part is when you're witnessing a loved one or even a friend starting to go down that spiral. What can you recommend? Because they could be completely in their world and in denial. Oh, I'm fine, but they're not, because you know them well. What's the best approach? Because we want the best for our friends and loved ones, right?
Right. Well, one of the approaches, I think, is to offer your support, because oftentimes people may not feel comfortable reaching out, or they may feel, again, going back to the whole stigma, like maybe there's something more wrong with them. A lot of people don't want to go to a therapist because they're afraid that they're going to be classified as being crazy. And so I recommend doing, and what they do in substance abuse is called an intervention, where maybe you gather people that are the closest to that person, friends and loved ones and talk to them about the behavior that you're recognizing and encouraging them to get help.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the worst things that you could say is, "What's wrong with you?"
Yes, exactly.
Or snap out of it. Or snap out of it.
Yeah.
And you can change. It's you who's choosing not to change. Depression is a real disease, and I want to make a disclaimer right now. Gina and Nancy and I were talking about this. We are not dispensing medical advice on this show. We're simply having a conversation about depression. And if you feel that you recognize those symptoms, please do go to your medical professional. We are not portraying that we are here to give medical advice, and I just wanted to be very, very clear about that, right, gals?
Yes. And there was one thing I wanted to add also. When we were talking about substance abuse, you can start to abuse substances that have been prescribed for you. And I want to make that clear because some people don't, they say, well, my doctor prescribed Valium or Xanax, which are anti-anxiety medications, and they start to abuse those substances. So, it's recognizing that you are taking more than what is supposed to be prescribed for you.
Right, and I've been told, and Jean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that if you have an addictive personality, then it doesn't matter what that substance is going to be. If you are prone to addictive behavior, whatever your addiction of choice, gambling, alcohol, drugs, and that kind of thing. So if you're predisposed to that, then you need to be aware when these things start to come up. Can people be predisposed to addiction?
Absolutely, absolutely. Addiction is, we know that alcoholism is a disease, and it's a disease, and people have the gene. So, and that's, again, goes back to the nature-nurture thing, because if you have this predisposition towards addiction in your family, and you encounter a trauma or a life-changing event, you may be inclined to begin to abuse substances from that point on.
Right.
And
when that happens, what do you do?
Well, I think the first thing, typically, in alcoholism, they say that it's the one disease that tells you that you don't have one. And so oftentimes people can rationalize it. Well, it makes me relax, but I would recommend joining a support group of some kind, and there's support groups for all kinds of different things, all kinds of addictions. Most addictions you can find, even smoking has a support group. So, I would recommend seeking out some type of, group support. And again, if you don't feel comfortable with that, then start out with, I need to talk to someone about this. And if it's a good friend, the friend can accompany you to your first meeting or to, your first session with a counselor.
And wouldn't it be true to say, sometimes it's not a good fit. So let's say you go to a talk therapist and you're just not feeling comfortable. Is it fair to say that there's not every therapist is the right therapist for each individual? And how do you make that distinction? If you're uncomfortable, you don't feel that you can share your feelings and thoughts, is that a red flag, or should you just push through that? How do you make that distinction that somebody is the right person for you?
Yes, I think you have to interview the therapist as well. They're interviewing you. You have to interview them. And it's important that you ask them what kind of experience do they have. If you're not feeling the connection, I recommend to people all the time, don't give up. Continue to seek support. Go see someone else. You need to feel comfortable. But I also want to say this, Karen, and that is that it may take time to build that rapport.
Right.
So, sometimes you may have to go back more than once.
That makes perfectly good sense. And before we actually went on the air, we were talking about some of the other kind of treatments. There's mindfulness treatment. There's technology. There is a cognitive behavioral therapy. Can we talk a little bit about some of these different kinds of therapies that are out there and being actually used at this point?
Right. You can, well, like cognitive behavioral therapy focuses on your thought processes and how your thought processes affect your behavior. And so what a clinician would help you do is identify irrational or negative thinking that you have, because oftentimes we have these automatic thoughts like, I'm worthless, I'm a failure, I'm not good at anything, or thoughts that say, for a depressed person, there may be thoughts that say everything is going wrong, when in actuality, not everything may be going wrong.
Right.
And so you have to start thinking about your thoughts and tracking your thoughts, and then identifying and replacing them with more rational thinking processes. The mindfulness training is very good, and it's becoming more popular to learn how to be in the present moment, because a lot of people focus on their past or they focus on the future, and that triggers a depressive episode because they haven't dealt with maybe things of their past, or they're fearful of their future. And so you start to practice to be in the present moment and concentrate on, one of the things that they teach you is, visualization, visualizing yourself in a peaceful state, any place that's peaceful or serene for you. You can sit in silence or read affirmations as part of your mindfulness meditation. So you can do any number of things.
Yes, that really works for me, but it takes time to develop a new habit. It's like Oprah and Deepak Chopra, they have their 21-day meditations. There's for a reason. It takes 21 days, as they say with any habit. But once you start incorporating it, just even small shifts. That's why I tell people that I'm working with, just one thing that will make a difference. We don't need to handle the whole kit and caboodle, because it'll flow. I just spoke with someone, we were talking about how Napoleon Hill used the word transmute rather than transform. And that is like basically shifting a negative thought into a positive one. And then starting to write and expand. And so that's why this conversation is so important, because it doesn't always have to be, wow, I feel like I'm getting depressed, and so all of a sudden now I'm sort of thinking of Hayden, what's her last name? She's the actress. She's seeking help for postpartum depression, and she was playing that role in the show Nashville of having postpartum depression, which I thought that was kind of fascinating.
Right.
You're in character, but you're in real life. But she stepped out to say, this is what I'm dealing with, and removing the shame from it, which I applaud her for doing, because we don't need to be in that state of shame, and how damaging that can be and hold you back, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I want to add that depression is on a continuum. You have some people that have mild depression, and you have some that have more severe. And an example that I have in my own life is my mother suffered from the debilitating kind of depression where she couldn't get out of bed, she couldn't go to work. She would do well for a certain period of time, and then she would relapse and fall into a severe depression. And for her, she needed to seek out the help of a psychiatrist. But with her generation, they didn't really know how to treat depression, and so they over-medicated her. So, but it's, like I said, the system has improved itself, but there tends to be a lot of shame and embarrassment, because some people think they should be able to handle and manage their lives better.
That's oh my gosh, that is so true, because all of a sudden you're thinking, well, what's wrong with me? Why can't I handle this depression? I mean, I can handle everything else. Why can't I handle this? And my husband is a psychiatrist, and he always likes to say that depression and psychiatry and the whole field of what you guys are all in, it's an art, not just a science. It's an art. And that it takes you need to really fine-tune everything that you're doing. So if you are going to prescribe medication, as was prescribed for your mom, it's not just prescribed once and you walk away. It's an art. You have to work with it and make sure that if it's too much, you bring them down. If it's not enough, you give them a little bit more. And that's why he calls it an art. Let's talk about the holidays. I mean, we're in the holidays. They're coming up. Halloween is right around the corner. We already see Christmas lights and Christmas commercials, and it's like, oh my gosh, really? I mean, it's every year we say the same thing. So as we enter the holiday season, as we as individuals, as families, as people in the workforce, as we enter the holidays, what are good signs to look out for that should be a light bulb that goes on and says, okay, I'm not approaching this in the right way. Maybe I'm depressed. Maybe I'm unhappy. What are some of the signals that we should be aware of?
Well, one of the first signs, too, is that you may begin to isolate yourself. You know, you stop connecting with friends and loved ones. You may start abusing substances. You may just have an overall sense of hopelessness and worthlessness, sadness that persists throughout the day. You know, a lot of people get depressed during the holidays because they don't have families, you know, or they feel very alone. And so one of the things that I actually recommend is get involved somewhere, volunteer somewhere, do something useful, take some type of action to prevent that isolation from happening.
Mm-hmm. I just have been hearing this term, shifting from the me to the we.
Right.
Stop getting out of your own space, and it's when you start helping others, there's a whole new energy to it.
Yes.
And there are people in need, a desperate need of everyone's assistance. So it becomes collective.
Exactly, and to expand on that, I mean, let's talk about if you personally do not suffer from depression, but you can see in your circle of friends or your network that there are people that actually are suffering, isn't it a good idea then just to reach out, not to say I see you're depressed, but just to be there, to be able to you want to talk, I'm here, let's have an open ear. It's a we. You're right. I mean, it is a we. We are part of a larger community, a larger family. I like to say that all my friends are really part of my extended family. So,
yes.
Yeah, so it's a matter of being there for people as well.
Mm-hmm. And one of the other things that I recommend, and I know this sounds very basic, but it's very helpful, is to exercise on a daily basis. Get at least 30 minutes of exercise a day, because that increases your endorphins, it elevates your mood, and it's very good overall for your health, and it helps that shifting, and because the tendency may be to want to isolate, but if you force yourself, okay, I'm gonna do one thing today to for someone else, or I'm going to do one thing to positive for myself and my life. But the volunteering thing really shifts you out of the just me, because that can be overwhelming, and so it shifts you into the we mentality. And you also get to see that, if you volunteer at a homeless shelter, you may see people that are much worse off than you. And, that helps you start to create a gratitude list for yourself.
Love that.
Yes. I always say with faith and gratitude, anything is possible. It's just getting that step out. You're so right about the exercise. Gosh, here in Southern California, it just seemed like summer was never going to end. And I'm talking, 100+ temps every day. It's been really a brutal summer. And there were some days that going for a walk, it was 80 degrees at 3 a.m. But I could start feeling that, not depression, but just like, I got to get out of here type of mentality. And then, I just found other ways to do that. But that's what I'm hearing continually too. Just 30 days, 30 minutes of exercise. Or you could even break it up, 15-minute walk in the morning, 15. It really does. I'm guessing they're doing more research on this, because some people get depressed thinking about how they're not putting in an hour workout, or they can't do it, and see what I mean, that spiral. So 30 minutes is attainable.
Yeah,
I'm going to take a walk after this because it's finally cooling down. It's nice.
Right.
So what's the correlation between depression and stress, or is there a correlation?
Definitely, because again, if you have a predisposition of depression, then you encounter a stressful situation that can trigger a depressive episode. And again, you know, there's a continuum of depression, so it can trigger, you know, I mean, even in the most severe cases, you might actually have what would be considered a nervous breakdown. You can, you know, need to be hospitalized, but the stress, you have to be able, one of the key things you have to be able to do is to learn to manage the stress in your life. If you find yourself feeling in a low mood, don't overload yourself. Take a step back. Maybe, you know, if you need to work a little less or take some projects off your plate, you know, try not to take on too much, you know, because it can be a trigger for a major depressive episode.
And the mindful, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, and, you know, there's other types of, I mean, there's different types of depression, and so, but it's just a good idea for all of them to lessen your stress load, because it can trigger a lot of symptoms to become more severe.
And that's where the mindfulness also can come into play as well. When you're having those stress experiences, especially during the holidays. I mean, I don't, you know, we can have them all year long, but during the holidays, there's so many other challenges that whether we choose to accept those challenges or not, they're there. You know, the holiday shopping and the cooking and the cleaning and getting ready for vacation and holidays. I mean, and work. I mean, on top of it, and then you have to go to work. So I think it does go hand in hand, and I think I am a fan of mindfulness. I'm a fan of breathing, the breathing exercises and those kind of things that you can do everywhere and anywhere. You can be sitting in your car and do them, and actually alleviate or lessen that stress and that depression. Any last minute thoughts, Jean, that you'd like to share with us as we start to wind down?
I just want to say, if you've identified with any of the symptoms, to please try to seek help. You know, you don't have to continue to live your life that way. Depression is treatable, and it can change, and you can live a happier existence.
And they can reach you by your email if they just want to get some information, maybe a referral, or just some other questions that they may have. They can reach you at your email, jeanday319@yahoo.com. Take advantage of this. You know, if you are feeling anything that we're talking about right now, maybe you need a little bit of help, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. Reach out to Jean. Nancy, any last thoughts?
I'm just very, very impressed with what you shared, Jean, and a word that just came to mind, Karen, as you were talking, and same with you, Jean, is to simplify your life. It doesn't have to be so complicated and so stressed. Start, like you said, start pulling things away. And I thank you for reminding all of us of that we don't need to be superwoman anymore, and that we learn to be comfortable within our own skin and within our own heart and soul, and then things start to flow a little bit. Hope is such a big word,
right?
And your advice was great. The help is there, and sometimes it could just be your friend. Just reach out. So thank you so much, and I wish you a wonderful holiday season. And it was great hearing your timely words of advice for our viewers. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jean, from myself as well. Nancy and I are very appreciative that you took time out of your day. We know that you're sitting there in your office. We could see that you took time out of your very busy day, and we really are very thankful that you did this. And I want to thank our viewers, because we know that you have a choice as to where you and how you spend your time, and we want to thank you for spending your time with us today. And as always, have an amazing rest of the day, and we'll see you next time on the next episode of Connecting People, Changing Lives. Goodbye, everyone.